filming.
All right. So what we're going to sit down today to talk about is kind of what you went through in your transition process, made you want to start RangerUp, and eventually getting to guys that are starting their own business, what you learn and things that they should be aware of when kind of taking on the challenge and the risk of doing that.
Sure. When you say transition, are you talking about transitioning from the military, or are you talking about, okay. So I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. I had always thought about starting my own business, but there wasn't like the master plan to be an entrepreneur. So what I did was I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I knew that I needed to kind of find some place to focus that, and so I went to grad school. Went and got a business degree, and while I was at business school, I was volunteering with the ROTC. I was teaching them mixed martial arts and small unit tactics, and the kids there were always complaining about not having cool t-shirts. They basically said everything that's military at the time, and this is hard for some people to remember at this point, but was skulls and snakes and deaths from above and over the top kind of biker art. And so I started making funny t-shirts for my students. I went to Michael's, I bought a bunch of white t-shirts, and I was heat transferring images that I made in like paint that were just stupid and funny. And you know, the kids there were always recommending that I start a company and actually take this to kind of the next level. And you know, it was kind of one of those things that you go, yeah, that might be cool, but you don't really think about it. I got a corporate job working at a Fortune 100 company, and was doing very well for myself, but I didn't feel like my life was going in the direction that I wanted. I was making more money than anybody on either side of my family ever had made. You know, I was 29 years old, wasn't worried about what was in my checkbook. Like, by all the normal metrics of what people tell you life is about, I was doing well, but I felt like I was just wasting time. There was no excitement about what I did. I didn't feel like I was making a significant contribution. And it wasn't because the company wasn't great. It was just because whenever you're in a large corporation, there are limits to what you can do. And I didn't operate incredibly well in that environment. And so I started a hobby. I started selling these t-shirts on the side to kind of fill that void. But it wasn't about, I didn't care about money. I wasn't trying to make more money. I had plenty of money. I wanted to do something cool that reconnected me to the community, that had made me feel worthwhile. And that started slowly taking over my life. And so at first it was, you know, we launched this website and it's neat, and you know, it'll be kind of fun to sell a couple of t-shirts or whatever. And then it was, you know, guys were writing me from Afghanistan and Iraq and talking about stuff that was, you know, problematic for them, and how important it was to see that there was somebody back home that understood. And I started working on this project. Basically, like, I would get home from my day job, eat dinner, and then I would do the hobby until 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and then sleep for 3, 4 hours and do it all again.
How'd Mama feel about that one?
I ended up getting divorced. So, yeah. So.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's all right. No. It's. I mean, that's in a weird way. That's kind of part of the journey. So, I found out I was getting promoted again in September of 2009. So 3 years after I started the hobby, almost to the day, and. I went home that weekend and did a lot of soul searching about what I really wanted in life. This promotion was going to significantly improve my financial standing, but I also knew that with this promotion, any chance of really continuing as an entrepreneur was going to go away, because the job was going to demand a lot more. And so I thought about it all weekend, and then I came in on Monday and I told my boss, you know, who was like one of the top 100 employees in the company, that I was quitting. And like he, honest to God, didn't understand.
Yeah.
Like did not looked at me like I was crazy. Told my parents they thought I was crazy. Told my friends they thought I was crazy. I mean, I was leaving a junior executive job in a great company that really liked me to sell T-shirts.
How big was the business at that point?
So the previous year it had only done like $250,000, but that year it ended up finishing at like 660K, 660K. So it wasn't big, but one of the things that you have to understand is that it's so easy to start a T-shirt company now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to own the inventory. You can, most of these new companies, they're doing it through like a Teespring or something. So they don't produce anything. And Facebook exists, and it did exist back then, but no one used it.
Right.
It wasn't a means of actually selling anything. So for us to grow back then, it was word of mouth, blogs, events. It was really hard.
Yeah.
It was actually very hard to start a business then. Now, if you're smart, you can start a T-shirt business and you can hit $1 million in a year or two if you've got the right content. But back to get to 640K was a brutal struggle.
Yeah.
And then the following year we broke $1 million, and
How many folks did you have then? How big was your staff?
it wasn't big. It was 3 or 4 of us.
Now, were they working with you before you left your
Nope.
other? So you hired on 3 or 4 people when you left the company.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry. No, they were working for me while I was still working at the company.
Okay.
Yeah. It had to, because I wasn't there during the day, so
Right.
somebody had to be shipping orders. But that was when I became a real entrepreneur, when I quit. Because when you're making a lot of money, and something goes wrong, it's easy to write a $5,000 check, a $10,000 check. It's easy to solve the problem. When you have no income coming in, the problem is significant quickly.
Right.
And so I burned through all the savings I had in the process. Before I burned through the savings, I went through a divorce. And so the money that I had saved up, I had planned to be able to last for, a much longer period of time before having to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
But I went through a divorce almost immediately after I quit my job, which significantly hampered my ability to last. So I almost went bankrupt. When I say that, it's not like I was going to actually file for bankruptcy, but I would have had to go back to some kind of corporate job. But I only had I had about $50K in credit card debt, and only had $1,300 left to my name. I had sold off all my mutual funds, everything. I had my kids most of the time at that point, so it was me and the kids were renting out 2 rooms in my buddy's house. It was like a serious low point in my life.
And this is how long after you left? This is within the first year or 2 years?
This is right after I left.
Oh, so immediately.
It didn't immediately go to that level,
Right,
but
right.
it immediately went south because of everything that happened in my personal life. So you had these 2 things that were happening at once that really made it very challenging, but in a weird, twisted way, it was also probably like the most rewarding 2 years that I had, with the company, because it was you ate what you killed.
Right.
We had to get better at everything or we wouldn't exist. And, just got better at everything. Became a better dad, became a better business person, just better at every aspect of my life, because you have to suffer through it and you have to succeed. There isn't another option.
Right.
So it was a crazy swing from, in 2009, I was in the corporate world. By the middle of 2010, I was almost bankrupt. By the end of 2011, I was buying a 4,000 square foot house in Chapel Hill. It was just a crazy swing of, lifestyle change, personal life change, near failure, success. And that's the swing of entrepreneurship. It's like this all the time, and you have to be able to ride that wave, and you have to be able to fight through the bad parts. And when you're on top, which is typically no longer than 6 months to 9 months before something else happens, you've got to appreciate that and try to plan for the future, because something bad always happens. And it's not even because you did anything wrong. Half the time it's because you grew. If you're successful enough, that's the hardest part. Very easy to start a business. Very easy to get a business to $500,000, $1 million. Very hard to get a business from $1 million to $5 million. Even harder to get a business from 5 to 10. It gets harder. You need different things. You need different skill sets in your employees. You need different processes in the business. It just gets harder. Everything gets harder.
Some guys are probably going to hear you throw out these numbers and think, well, I could live off of $500,000. And maybe not realizing that that's your total sales. That's not
right.
That's not what you get left over.
Yep. And and then you have to decide what kind of business that you want to run. Are you running a business where you're taking everything? Are you running a business where you're sharing with the employees? Are you running a business that has, that takes care of people in terms of time off, where they live, compensation with, 401k, good health care, all that stuff costs. And this, I'm not even trying to get, political, but, with Obamacare, as soon as Obamacare kicked off, we used to spend about 60% of our rent cost on health care, and now we spend about 140% of our monthly rent cost is health care. So it costs us more on a monthly basis to insure our employees than it does to rent a 20,000 square foot warehouse in Durham, North Carolina. And so everything that, it sounds like a lot of money when you start talking about the company brings in this much money.
Right.
It goes away fast.
Yeah.
And it's the other piece of it is inventory management.
Yep.
Inventory management kills everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about, you had a shirt and you didn't know, you don't know how many people are going to buy it. You don't know. You really, in this particular business, you don't know what's going to happen. And
you have ideas, and we have models, and we're right most of the time, but you're not ever right.
Right.
And the other thing is things happen. Like you can get into a flow with a certain shirt, but then an event happens and that shirt becomes popular.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never going to be in a position, contrary to what anybody thinks, where you have like a few things and you can keep a business running on that. In order to sell a shirt, and if you think about it, in order to sell one shirt, you have to own probably 10 of that shirt. A couple per size,
right,
in every category. And so it's not even about profitability; it's about cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
So you can optimize for profitability, and you can have nothing to sell and be profitable, but still go out of business.
Right.
You've got to be able to have cash on hand. You've got to be able to have cash on hand to pay for things, and that's the biggest challenge, especially as you grow, because you're here, you're trying to get here. As you accelerate up to this point, you have to buy more and more things in order to be here. If you're wrong on the things that you buy, then you have thousands and thousands of dollars sitting on the shelves.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it. You can't pay. When the landlord comes every month, you can't be like, hey, rather than pay you this, $10,000 or whatever, how about I give you like 5,000 T-shirts? It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So, you really have to be careful with all that stuff. So it only gets harder. The more that you succeed, the harder the job gets.
So, what were you had expectations? I'm assuming when you said you stopped and you thought about it that one weekend, and you were kind of looking at one direction. Basically, the Neo, you've been leaving 2 lives, and only one of these lives has a future.
Yep.
So how your expectations of what you thought your life was going to be going, or what direction it was going to be going, and then what it really happened.
So when I got out of the military, and you've probably heard this a lot of guys get out and they're like, okay, I served my country, I sucked it up, now I'm going to go get mine, now I'm going to go succeed, now I'm going to go make money. A lot of guys say that. I wasn't aggressively saying that, but that was what I was thinking in my head, like it's time to go make money now. And I did that, and it didn't bring me any happiness.
Exactly.
And so I changed the way I thought about things, and I actually made the decision that I was going to live smaller. I said, I've done all these things, that didn't make me happy, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to spend money on frivolous things. I'm just going to make sure that I have enough to take care of my family, and outside of that, I want to do work that's interesting. And so that was it. That was the decision. And I thought that if I poured myself full-time into RangerUp, that I would be able to make a decent enough living where I could do something that I thought was worthwhile and make enough. Just like all entrepreneurs, it would be great for everything to blow up like crazy and to be rich and all those sorts of things, but that hasn't been my drive since I quit my corporate job. I realized that I don't care. I really don't care, Some people use wealth as a scorecard. For me, as long as I have enough where I'm not worried about my family, I don't care. I don't spend money on anything. I don't buy anything. I buy DVDs, and now mostly digital downloads, and like wine and bourbon. They're not, they can be expensive hobbies, but I'm not one of those guys. It's like, oh, I need this $400 bottle of bourbon, like $50, $60, that's fine. Yeah. We're good. So I don't spend any money, so I don't really need anything. So for me, it really is about the work, and that's why I was, jumping into range 15, which was a monumental task, and conquering that was huge, because that was one of those things where people say, you're never going to succeed at that, it can't be done, it's impossible, you're going against the industry, and to go against the industry and get shunned and still beat it was awesome.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of challenges that I look for, and in the process, you make some money. We made a little money off the movie. It was a success. Definitely, looking back on it now, financially, it was worth the time. But I would have done it even if it broke even, because it was a huge undertaking. It was almost impossible, but we did it, and that's there forever now.
Yeah, you don't go to Ranger School just because you get a cloth patch.
Exactly. Yep. So,
So what would you tell somebody who's thinking about, I want to get out, I want to start my own business? I think it's interesting. You keep highlighting on it. It's how important the work is to you, more than the money, and I think that's kind of something to keep in the back of your mind. But what would you tell that guy? He's thinking about doing it.
You don't start a business to make money. I know a handful of people that can do that have that ability to be. They're purely motivated by money, and the money is the exciting thing to them. Like the business could be selling porta potties, or it could be owning an NFL franchise, and if selling porta potties made them, $12 more a month, they would do that hands down and not lose, and be thrilled about it, because their motivation is the money. They find comfort in the scorecard. I made $5 million last year and you only made $4 million. I'm winning. That makes me happy. But there are very few people that are like that. A lot of people talk like that. Like they say that that's how they're motivated. They say things like it's all business and, money makes the world go round and all that kind of shit. But most people want to do something that they find interesting. And so if you're thinking about starting a business, you should know a couple of things. First of all, it's going to take twice as long as you thought it was going to in order to find any measure of success. It's going to cost 3 times as much than you thought you were going to have to invest into it. And it will take 4 times the effort that you ever thought imaginable. When things go bad, and they do always go bad, I don't care who you are, there is no one but you that is going to solve it. And so if you don't put in the work, your company dies. That's it.
Yeah, man.
There's no backup plan. There's nobody that's going to bail you out. The government doesn't care if your company exists. You're not a large bank. There's not going to be no one's going to sweep in and save you. Like, you just die. And you have to know that going in, that there are no excuses, no one gives a shit. You've got to plan for success, but most of all, you've got to execute. Execute every day. If you don't, you're going to die.
I think of that picture of you asleep at the computer.
Yeah.
Things go wrong, and guys look at you. I don't think there's any question that you've been a success, and even as a success.
Yeah, it never ends.
It never ends.
Never ends.
My last question. Who's Gene Vandenham based off of?
Gene Vandenham is an amalgamation of all of the cheesy 80s stars that we love and every bad sergeant major you've ever met. Every over the top, everyone just spent 3 weeks in the field, you haven't showered in 21 days, and the guy's walks up to you right as you're trudging out of the field covered in dirt and mud and everything, and he's just you're fucking...
Your boots are unbloused.
Yeah, your earplug case is on the wrong side of your LBE. I know that's dating myself right there, but hey, why is your boot unbloused? Why is there's a tear in your fucking uniform? Fuck you, man. Fuck you. So Gene Vandenham, he's a stud, but he's that weird stud.
Yeah.
The guy that's been to 17 schools, but he had to fuck over 18 people to get there, He's been to every school, but he sold his soul to do that, he's got every medal from every deployment, but he also wrote all his own awards. You know what I mean? He's that guy. It's not like he isn't good at his job, but it's just fuck you, man, So that's Gene Vandenham.
What's he gonna do when he retires?
Gene Vandenham doesn't retire. He just lives forever.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, man, I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.